Okay, well, let's get started with our afternoon panel, which is child custody resolution through a parenting plan coordinator and co-parenting therapists. Our great panelists today are Lisa Hacker and Robin Sax, who've both and each been a tremendous help to me in numerous cases. Lisa Hacker is a licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in helping families in high conflict custody issues. She focuses on communication skills to reduce conflict and set up more healthier communication skills. She enjoys collaborating with other professionals in her work, and most recently has been spending more time at her ranch in Ojai and riding her horse, Pink Cadillac. Robin Sax is an attorney and also a clinical therapist who specializes in cases where therapy and the law interact. She has experience in criminal law as a former sex crimes and domestic violence prosecutor. She is also a parenting plan coordinator and a mediator and a co-parenting therapist, and the author of 5 books relating to children abuse and parenting. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to you ladies.
Thank you. Well, we are excited to be here. We are the after lunch, wake you up, cheery crowd, because everyone loves having a little group therapy after lunch. So taking a moment, kind of feel free to interact with us throughout this process. We'll have a screen share here in a second. But we're going to start kind of this presentation with a story, because everyone loves a good story, but also to kind of understand how this topic was birthed and how we were connected together. So Lisa, I'm going to let you start.
So, I love a story too, obviously. So the story basically came, I think it actually was maybe about New Year's last year, because I always try to look at the new year of reassessing things. And for people and all you guys, a lot of you know me, thinking of new ways to do things, what needs to change. So one thing I had, and I did this with my assistant, Melissa, we looked through all my cases and looked at some of the ones that were just really so challenging, feels like we're going nowhere, just round and round and round and round. And what was I going to do about those cases? And, I've had people that I've seen for years and years and years, many years. And we just, it just, like I said, wasn't going anywhere. So I started to think, what could I do to supplement, and try to better help these cases? And I've had this in some other cases where this has happened, was this idea of sort of, can we bring on a PPC? Because they really need a decision maker. A lot of these people need, I believe, some decisions. And we're not talking about the huge decisions. We're not talking about redoing custody. Those really weren't the decisions, but it was these smaller things. And no matter how many suggestions sometimes I make, or, my kind, gentle or Lisa Hacker way sometimes that I try, sometimes not so kind and gentle, they just got kind of dug in. So I really actually went to these people and said, this just isn't working. And I really feel like you need something else in addition to me. It can be in addition to me, or you can take a break from me. But I really, really think this is what's going to help. And I'd met Robin, and Robin is to me, a gift. The fact that Robin wants to do these really difficult, challenging PPC cases, was just terrific. And I think her and I really saw things fairly similarly. We have a little different styles, but I think complementary, and sort of hence it was born. And that I ended up referring cases to Robin, and now sort of this collaboration, has formed in a I think a really healthy, positive way to assist some of these clients. So Robin, you want to give a little bit?
Yes, and I will, and I'll put a pretty PowerPoint on because in a
Yeah.
second, because we actually did a PowerPoint, and both Lisa and I, both by way of background, you should know, come from a very multidisciplinary team collaborative background. And so, even when I was in the DA's office as a lawyer, and I was a prosecutor that worked on a multidisciplinary team, I was working with social workers, law enforcement, advocates, therapists, medical personnel, and coincidentally and unbeknownst to me, Lisa also worked at Stewart House, which is where I started my career. And so you've got two people who really believe in this collaborative model, not necessarily the same as collaborative divorce model, but a collaborative multidisciplinary model when dealing with faceted issues, particularly in custody cases. And so and on our team, we don't just look at, we've kind of are growing this concept of, we look to as the lawyers as being on this team, minors counsel of being on this team, children's therapists being on this team. And I think it's kind of just to kind of take a step back to go about just kind of how, the cases, how the cases kind of come to us, the cases that are easy, and I'll put my power up, I promise, in 1 second. The cases that are easy are not the cases that we're seeing. There's always some level of complexity in the cases we're seeing. And what we're seeing is that there's kind of a variety of levels of complexity. So now I am going to put up our PowerPoint for just a second here and move us into our slideshow. So from start. So you can see our cute little thing here. By the way, we love interaction and questions. If I didn't say this, please feel free to type things in, interrupt us. We'll answer them in real time. We're going to talk today about our story, but we'll get into this. So we really have looked at, and we look at our cases in terms of stages of conflict, kind of using the lens of cancer or cancer staging as kind of the model by which we kind of stage level of difficulty. And I think when Lisa began her story with you of looking at the cases, she was looking, if I'm channeling Lisa, she was looking at her kind of stage 3, 4 type of cases and asking herself, is there any cure to these people? So just like cancer, if you're staged with stage 1, it's a small little tumor, it's not grown outside the organ, it's pretty small, you can, maybe a little surgery, a little snip, it's gone, it's treatable, you're going to survive, minimal intervention, and things are going to work out likely well, and you're going to live your life. Maybe you have to kind of monitor over time. Stage 2, it's a little bit larger than stage 1, but it hasn't spread out to the other tissues. Again, you may have to monitor it a little bit more. There may be more advanced interventions you need to do. It may be maybe not just one little outpatient, local surgery. It may have to be a little surgery, but it's still very, very treatable. When you start getting into stage 3, and certainly by stage 4, the tumor's now spreading, it's affecting other areas, it may be in the bloodstream and the lymph nodes. And by the time you're at stage 4, you're really talking about things like life, life elongating type of things. It's not, are you going to survive? It's how can you make the end of life generally better? I'm not saying that that's the case for every stage 4, but it's kind of viewed as that this is likely much more higher chances of being terminal, and someone may not make it through that time. That's how we look at our kind of custody conflicts. The cases that are stage 1 and 2, co-parenting work with Lisa and co-parenting work with anybody likely could provide enough intervention. And I'm going to get this screen share off for a second. I may have enough intervention that actually can provide cure and with monitoring and help and assistance and check-ins and frequent doctor's appointments, they're likely to be okay. It's when they become stage 3 and 4 that's when Lisa and or other co-parenting therapists or lawyers may say, you know what, we're going to need a surgeon on call. And the surgeon on call is a parenting plan coordinator, the one who can provide decision-making and being able to help resolve things and be a little bit of a hammer. Now, I'm uniquely qualified in that, and that I have that bossy lawyer side of me, even though I'm a therapist. I'm much more of a lawyer at heart than a therapist, although I've never practiced family law in a litigation standpoint. But while I come with love and I come with developmental and therapeutic acumen, I come with that bossy lawyer side of me, whereas Lisa has that kinder, gentler therapist side. So I want to turn it over back to Lisa, who can talk about, really what goes on in parenting plan, or sorry, in co-parenting therapy, what happens from at the beginning of a case, and what would be helpful for you guys to know that you can tell your clients.
Okay, so I think one of the things, at least, and this has been a change, I can only obviously speak for myself and how I do practice now. And again, for a lot of you out there, you've known me for many, many years. And I think you've known that I've changed how I've done things. So currently what I believe is most effective for me and the clients that I work with is to have the co-parenting be confidential. That I really, really feel that in order for them to have a safe space, that having a confidential as it is mediation type of in their agreement with me when they go into co-parenting. And I think that's worked really well. I mean, for my, I think people are open. I think they can share. I think they don't have to worry about being subpoenaed, for me being subpoenaed, for me testifying. I also will not, and this is another thing up front, I will not talk to a custody evaluator either unless it is agreed upon before they start co-parenting, if they know that. Again, I feel like there's something that's not right about that. Like, everyone needs to be upfront and know what they're getting into. And so that's just sort of a position that I've taken, which I actually think has helped. So, and the other thing that I've done, and going to like sort of our stage of approach here, is that I've really tried, and again, this is just in my practice and how it's grown over the years. When I'm doing an initial intake, which is done by my assistant, Melissa, I can automatically already sort of identify where something's a 4 or a 3+. And then I realize, like, they are not going to get where we need to get with just co-parenting. So that's something else that I think is very, very important. I understand that everyone, and I do too, we always want people to go to co-parenting, or to solve their custody schedule. But if they are so fundamentally apart, as much as I want to do everything I can, and I'm always, always happy to try, a lot of times I think we just have to be realistic. Like, I mean, when we have one person saying no overnights till age 5, and the other ones, I want 50-50, like, that's a big gap. And I think there's also other ways to heal those gaps. So in part of what I've done, this is the COVID advantage, I'm going to call it. And what I found is that I have worked more since COVID in collaborating with attorneys, and which I love. Like, I really, it's such an important part of my work. It's my relationships with all of you guys really mean a ton to me, and it's really important. And I think it helps. I can't even say tremendously. I mean, I think the team approach that I've seen since COVID, because we're so easily accessible, right? It's so different. Like Monday, I don't know if you're out there, my Monday people. Monday's the day normally I take off because I work today. But we have something that's, been lingering that we have to deal with. So for me, we're normally, if I had to go to the office and do it, I wouldn't do it. But to take 2 hours out of a day that normally is a day off to collaborate together, it's easy to do. So this is, to me, become, when we talk about COVID advantage, it's a huge advantage. The other advantage that I've seen a ton of, which I adore, and I don't know if we have judges out there as well today, but I love, love, love the work I've done with the retired judges and doing mediation. And that's another collaboration, much like collaborating with a PPC, that some people just need. They need not only to hear things from Lisa Hacker. I just talked to someone about it today. I said, maybe we need to mediate with a private judge that might need to help. They might say things that, have a different power than I have, or make a difference. So that's really what I think have found, that the idea of really working together, not just actually to the resolution. Like, again, having the lawyers in sessions. I've had lawyers be in sessions, one side and then the other side. And it's so helpful because I think for you guys, the lawyers, like to see your clients in the session, to hear how they sound, to hear, a little more objectively, I think is wonderful. And I think for me, under the umbrella, which I found has been the gift of mediation and confidentiality, it gives us that ability to be much more honest and open and with each other rather than thinking about who's going to go to court and how's this going to work. So that's how I've seen this last year work. And I think things are going well. And again, like working with people like Robin has, it's just such an addition to have access to another option to give these people. And I think what I'm going to say, and Robin's going to talk a lot more about this, I think a lot of times the clients don't know what a PPC is. When I say that to them, like when I said, well, you could have this type of person, they're like, I've never heard of that. So they don't even know what it is. And so I think maybe, back in the old days, by the way, this is how old I'm like 100, right? Wait, when I say this, and those out there who are 100 like me will know, remember Special Master? That was used to be I did this work. So at one point I did PPC Special Master work until I realized it was not where I did best because I didn't. And, but I did it for years. And so, anyway, I think we have an opportunity in our community to really be creative. And I've always said that. I think it's about the creativity and thinking outside the box that can help us get to solutions with these really, really difficult and challenging cases. Because the easy ones are easy. We don't need to talk about those. They're easy. I have lovely people at times. They come in, oh, we'll do this day. We work out the schedule. We do a holiday schedule in one session and they're happy and it's easy. But we really need to focus on the ones that are much more challenging because those are the ones that I call them, sometimes they're lifers. That's what I feel like they just, and that shouldn't be. That doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make me feel like I've been successful in the way I would like to be successful in helping them either. So
I think that's an important point. And I'm curious, Lisa, about your practice in this way, because one of the things, either whether I'm a co-parenting therapist or a PPC, one of the things that I have as part of my practice, and I'll talk a little bit about how my structure works, is that I will speak with collaterals. I will speak with children's therapists. I will speak with parents therapists. I'll speak with grandparents. I'll speak with significant others to get a full context of what may be going on in a case. And I have found, and I put in my engagement letter, it states that I am allowed to have ex-parte communications with individual lawyers, because I don't usually find it very helpful to have a group call with a lawyer with both lawyers present, because I can't be honest with a individual lawyer about what their client could potentially do to improve themselves. I don't need to give information to help fuel conflict. I want to give information to help fuel change and hopefully get the lawyers to reinforce any behavioral messages that I may be seeing and be able to have a candid conversation. What do you do?
It's a little different. Yeah, see, I think I'm a little different in that way because I think as a PPC, you have a kind of wider berth. And I think, so yes and no. So I will talk to children's therapists are very helpful. I definitely will. I usually do not talk to significant others unless they have to consent and they have to want that, but not so much that I do not, I do not do. And I do talk to the lawyers much more together than separately, probably, because again, in my work in co-parenting, a lot of times we're again trying to facilitate let's say a custody agreement. And I actually, I want everyone to hear it. And so it's a little bit different, and not that sometimes it happens, but less so probably than what you do. And that's why it's so important. I think that everyone knows that each professional does it a little bit differently too. So that's not everyone's the same. That's just sort of how I work.
I think that's important for people to understand, because one of the things, and this is just what happens, is a lot of lawyers will have their clients call, you, call me, call another co-parenting person. And one, they don't even know necessarily what service they're looking for. Sometimes they're like, my lawyer told me to call and I don't know why I'm calling and what you actually do. And I know you and I both utilize intake people to run conflicts. I also do for every, I do one free 30-minute Zoom to explain the entire process. And basically I go through my philosophy, my procedures, my how I work, my fees, my engagement letter, confidentiality, all of that good stuff. But I do ask that both parents get copied on the initial email and both parents are present for that initial meeting. So that is something that I think that as attorneys, if you are having your clients reach out to us, it would expedite the process if they were told to copy their co-parent, because we could initially start all of the communications. Are there any tips kind of in the initial reaching out to you, Lisa, that you have?
Yeah, I mean, that's important. Well, and I should just say, I don't do custody evaluations. It's so funny because I get this too, like, we'd like to set up a custody we've been referred to you for a custody evaluation. I said, well, that's nice, but I'm not an evaluator and I have no training in that. So, no. So it's kind of, I agree, Robin. I think it's important. And sometimes they don't know exactly what they're looking for. I mean, in a way, I think I'm super fortunate, but a lot of people do not have this, that I have and I think for all you know, my lovely Melissa, who I, don't know what I would do without. I mean, she really takes the time and then communicates with me, like, here's the situation, here's what the people are looking for, then gets back to them. So, but a lot of people don't have assistants and don't have people that might screen. So just be aware with other co-parenting therapists, you just want your client to know what they're actually asking for. I think that's really important. Or just know, and I'm going to say this only because I've said it maybe 100, but I'll say it 101. Lisa Hacker does not do reunification therapy. So, and everyone, I think everyone knows it, but I don't know. And I know how hard it is, but there's so many calls where people they might not even call it that in the call. And it's sort of what you're talking about, Robin, but they'll like, I haven't seen my teenager in 7 months and they're refusing and the other parents keeping them away from me. Like, that isn't what I do. So I feel bad. And then the other thing I do feel bad about, which is really hard, and I don't know what our solution to this is as a whole, but everyone wants referrals. And I'm very uncomfortable. Like, I don't know, with someone who I don't know, I just can't give out random referrals when I don't even know what their situation is. So maybe we have to work on that, of how we used to with the court, have that list of people, but it just seems very hard. And I do, always, I know it's hard because they're looking so desperately for someone that's going to do, what a certain type of therapy or what they need. And just sometimes I just, obviously I don't do it, or I'm too full, or, whatever it might be. So I just think it's, those are some of the challenges.
So to bring us into the kind of PPC land, I'm going to kind of bring us back to a story of a specific, not specific case, but
they all, there's
it's an unspecific hypothetical. But
there's about how many that are the same, Rob. This is what's funny. Don't anyone out there think we're I know they're talking about our person.
No.
That part is their person. There's probably like 30 of those same people. So it's okay. Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah. So there are a lot of very similar themes in our cases. And I believe that Lisa was working with with the two parents of a child who took a very, 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 very long time to get to a judgment. And their judgment ended up basically saying, like every other line is, if you can't agree to travel, work it out with Lisa Hacker or a qualified mediator. If you can't agree to a step up or whatever, work it out with Lisa Hacker or a qualified mediator. If you can't figure out what extracurriculars, work it out with Lisa Hacker or a qualified mediator. And these people, it took 4 years to get to that agreement, I think, or 5 years or whatever what it was. And Lisa Hacker had spent 2 years at least trying to work it out, and then not. And these people were extraordinarily difficult. And then she had recommended a PPC. And they love the idea of a PPC, but because the attorneys were not familiar, and rightfully so. I've been involved in a lot of the AFCC and PPC. California, like, we are trend setting in all areas of the law except in the PPC world. PPC has been used all over the country. It's actually can be ordered in other states. We are a consent state, and I'll go through that. We have to have a PPC by stipulation, but it's only really been since COVID, and now it's really becoming more popular and not something that a lot of attorneys are familiar with. So what will happen is you will either get a recommendation from a therapist like Lisa, or even a signed judgment that will say, we agree to a parenting plan coordinator, but no one will have actually done the PPC stipulation. And if you have a high conflict person or people to begin with, which people who need PPC by definition generally are, if they don't have that stipulation and they're sent to me, then I end up having to be in a situation that I have to negotiate and mediate the PPC stipulation, which is a terrible place to begin. And I know that by the time you folks have those cases, you're dying to get them off of your desk, and you're thrilled, and you don't care if they have just anything that says something close to PPC. You're like, yes, I'm out. But what ends up happening is, without that stipulation, very often we never get to a stipulation. And that actually ended up happening in this case with Lisa, where they could never agree to a PPC. Now, I'm still working with them, mainly because of my bossy way. They kind of think I'm a PPC, even though I'm not a PPC in their case. And I have zero authority, and I tell them that all the time. But I guess my big bossy mouth kind of sounds like a PPC. But in this particular case, it does end up being deadlock and gridlock a lot because of that order not being in place. So I do want to just pop up our screen share for 1 second, Lisa, if you don't mind.
No, of course.
Going here. So what is a parenting plan coordinator? A parenting plan coordinator, the authority depends on the state statute, whether it's court ordered by party stipulation. The role is to be a court order neutral to assist the parents in the following ways: either to educate about child development, communication, conflict resolution, implement safe and workable parenting plans, monitor compliance with court orders, plans, or agreements, assess impasses and co-parenting, and then resolve. The biggest role that most people know PPCs as is resolving impasses and co-parenting, or resolving conflicts in a timely manner. We also protect and sustain healthy relationships and meaningful child-parent relationships, mediate disputes, arbitrate disputes, and file recommendations with the court that may become court orders. PPCs in different states can be referred to as a special master, family court advisor, a guardian ad litem, a wise person, a parenting referee. And what is critical is that the PPC by stipulation, because we are a stipulation state, there is a form which is in your materials that you must really understand. It fully explains exactly the levels of authority, the roles, and what a PPC must do in order for a resolution of conflict to become a binding potential court order. How we do our work and how I do our work, and one of the things my personal style is I'm always going to pick up where Lisa left off, or where any co-parenting person left off. And I am going to try my darndest with my best Girl Scout self and try to mediate a resolution. I will always, I think that just psychologically speaking, everybody does better when the decisions are their own. And if we can get people to have insight to their own contribution to the dynamic, everyone's really good about talking about what everyone else does wrong, but to recognize what they could do better through work on one-on-one, through talking to other people, through talking to lawyers. I hope to get people to come to some sort of resolution. If they can't, I often will do the judicial, borrowing from judges, I'll do the indicated. If I am going to be asked to make a recommendation in this case, I am likely to do A, B, and C. And I give that way I give the opportunity and another way for the parties to kind of come together and see where it's going to go. Because a lot of times they don't want that written recommendation showing that they didn't win, if you will. Then
Wait, can I interrupt you, Robin, about that? Because I want to say something, because before you go past it, because I think that's so important, this piece that you're talking about with this. I think it's psychologically fascinating that this is the whole thing. It's, and you said it, it's like the idea that they think they have a PPC. One, sometimes people think that someone is going to ultimately make the decision. This is what I found when I did it years ago. They actually were able to come together to make the decision, because then the idea of someone else making it, it's just, it was always fascinating to me how that worked, because I remember that's what just hit me from when you said that. And so I think that's really important to realize. It's just sometimes the sense that there is someone there that could have that opportunity to make that decision, that then they are more motivated to make it on their own or come to an agreement. So I
think that's real. I think that's
Yeah.
really, really important. And also, you know, you and I, we get copied on a lot of client communication. And
5,000, how many? 5,000, maybe 5,000.
I mean, crazy amount of communication. And so we really have a sense of the dynamics as they play out in real time, and also how the parties and people interact with us, right? What their level of how professional they are, how timely they are, whether they respond to our emails, whether they pay our bills, whether, you know, you get a lot of information. And I don't think people recognize about what personalities that come up just in how they talk to our assistants, how they talk to people. You know, I will get notes saying this person was really rude on the phone to me, or this person was really agitated and mean, or this person, you know, and what those are. And that tells me something. And I think it's important that you guys as lawyers get a sense of what's kind of going on behind the scenes. And it's interesting because when I do collaborate on a case, and Lisa and I collaborate, you know, we generally, you know, I'd say 85% of the time kind of come down the same way. Sometimes we'll have a slightly different view and we take into consideration different experiences or what have you. But that when you start talking to therapists and, you know, all these different people, and you're getting the same information, you know, it really starts to put together an assessment of what that individual is like. And so I don't know how often, Lisa, do you think that kind of percentage wise in your cases, if you were to kind of globally assess of how many you think needs this kind of higher level of care?
Well, less now, because I definitely did. I mean, they have PPCs. The ones, I mean, I really went through, and I actually, you know, am having that happen with the ones that I think need to happen. But there's still more. I mean, I would say now that could benefit from them, maybe. I mean, it could probably be even up to 20%, I could say. I mean, I'm just, you know, it's a good amount that I think it would be helpful. Also, you have to remember, I mean, I think everyone needs to remember out there that some of the stuff that they disagree about are very small. They're small things that might need a decision that would actually just stop the conversation. You know, these are not often huge things. So just again, what I call it, I have another person they did, again, I don't know if this lawyer's out there, but they did an amazing stipulation. This was with another PPC, that there was and I have a few of these actually, that there's a whole process. Like they have to come to Lisa Hacker first for a few sessions. Like we have to try it like Lisa Hacker level to get it resolved. And then if Lisa Hacker doesn't resolve it, it goes to the PPC. So that's just as things go on in life, which I actually really love that approach, because look, a lot of times we do get it resolved and it never goes to the PPC, whatever that specific issue is. So that's another thing that happens. So those could be somewhat, you know, like randomly come up. But I love it because I have a backup and I can get them a resolution. If I say we tried, we did our best, and we don't, PPC, you know, decide it. Is it, you know, one of them was a doctor decision, you know, like, do they go see this, need a second consult on a specialist or not? One said no, one said yes. Decide, you know, that's, you know, an example.
So Lisa, I just got, I'm getting texts in addition to messages in here. And I want to point out, I want to clarify a comment, because first of all, I will tell you that PPCs and co-parenting therapists may go together like peas and carrots. Narcissists and borderlines go together like peas and carrots. And so there's definitely, on a first blush, as a comment was made to me, is that a borderline person can be very charming, and narcissists can be very charming too. And lots of people can be very charming, and certainly at the assistant level, or when they're talking to our assistants, we're not character, we may not be assessing or getting these things. And you learn this in time. As part of my process, just so people know, in terms of PPC work, how I work is after it goes through my assistant, who conflict checks and then sends them to me for a joint 30-minute Zoom. What I then do is an individual hour-and-a-half session with each parent, where I use that as an opportunity. And I tell people, PPC work is not about the past. And it's really frustrating for people. And I get it, right? They are not there because of what is written in their mind of what happened today. They're there because of the years or months or decades, if you will, of conflict that have happened between them. And I want to validate their experience of understanding the past. But the reality is that the decisions I need to make are here and now and future. And so how they did Christmas for the last 5 years is helpful and could be interesting and could be very, very important, but not necessarily going to be the decision-making criteria for how we're going to do it. Maybe they've done it very poorly for the last 5 years. And if it was working, they wouldn't need me to be here. So I do spend, in my first sessions, I do an hour-and-a-half with each parent individually. Then I do a joint session and watch them interact. And then I will deal with issues as they come up. But the first session feels like a mental health session, and it is really an opportunity to get into the past. That's where I let them tell me all about the good, the bad, the ugly of their relationship, how awful the other parent may be, all the things that they've done wrong. And from that, I'm able to kind of see and start to work on an agenda. And I also put in I have a very structured system with my clients, and I would be curious if you do some of these interventions, Lisa, too. I put a communication protocol in effect that is how communications need to be written, how they need to communicate their issues in a very kind of business-like format. It does borrow a little bit of Bill, Eddie, Biff, but it's a modified format that is about a section on FYIs, a section where there's a request required on certain questions, and then a section that if things don't get resolved in those emails, get put onto the PPC agenda. So I don't know how formalized you are, but I find that in the PPC, I'm kind of like the strict teacher in 7th grade, right? Like the one how you remember that teacher that made you work really hard and you hated her. That's me. I put rules in place. I give homework assignments. I get copied on things. I make them change how they communicate to each other. And I get really involved in the behavioral aspects of how they work.
And I want to just comment on the text, the narcissist and the borderline. My favorite thing is when I hear, you will be so charmed. I'm not so charmed. I just want you to know, please, like they're not, we've done this. I mean, I've done this now over 30 years. It is people, I think what's hard with the clients, and I want to say this, they obviously don't know what we are thinking in our heads and what we understand about what's going on. So I always appreciate that, because it's got to be hard, because I'm sure a lot of times they sit there and thinking, oh my God, like Lisa's completely doesn't, get this, but I do. And I really do understand. But look, we have people with all kinds of, personality issues, personality disorders. I mean, that's our job. And we have to do our best we can. I mean, and I'm just one, and it's just me. I am not a fan of diagnoses. I just, whether they are borderline, whether they're narcissists, whatever they are, like, we are left to help them. And that's what my job is. So the labeling is never, to me, particularly helpful. I see what I see. Behavior matters. What that looks like is what I experience, how they are with me. That's what matters. Like so just personally, that part is a little tricky for me.
I totally agree with that, because I also think that We also see characteristics. There's a lot of characteristics that people have that doesn't necessarily make them have the diagnosis, right? And if they're in stress or distress, or whether there's other factors that may be going on, those are things that we need to think about. But I want to just spend a moment on the PPC stipulation. If you are not familiar with the form PPC-1, please do yourself a favor and read this form. It is a very comprehensive stipulation form that is actually has pre-selected check marks that the court has as default levels of authority for a PPC. So the PPC, the first part talks about the findings of the court that allows for the stipulation. In part A, that's part A is the stipulation, part B is the findings of the court. Part C talks about the order appointing the parenting plan coordinator. D is about the limits of authority. And then section E talks about the different levels of authority. And I think that lawyers don't necessarily realize that there is different levels of PPC authority. So PPC can be a level 1, 2, or 3 decision-making authority. And then there's a level that is assigned to whatever the specific issues are. And the form actually defines 40 kind of generic issues that pretty much cover everything. There's actually space to add issues if there's specific issues to a case and give it a level of authority. So level 1 are things that are kind of short-term, practical, in the moment kind of things. I'm running late. Can we change the drop off to being at this location instead of pick up from school? That's in the moment, change the location, something that parents should be able to agree to, but may not be able to. That is a level 1 type of example of a level 1. It's a short-term, practical, and oftentimes sensitive decision. And a PPC can actually make a decision on that on the fly, in an email or text or whatever the mode of communication is. And if that decision is then needs to be turned into a court order, it can. And those are ones that are initially communicated directly to the parents and counsel using rapid or oral written communication. I generally find that in these level 1s, I never need to really make the level 1, because those are the ones that people end up agreeing, okay, I'm fine with you picking up at this different location. So it's never going to really turn into a court order necessarily. I'm not saying all the times that it's not the case, but those are kind of what those are. Any parent can seek review of a level 1 decision by order to show cause. The parent seeking review must file that order within 30 days of the court's entry of the level 1 written order and serve it within 10 days of its filing. So the idea with any level actually is that if the PPC writes a formal recommendation, it can become a court order. And that is for level 1 and 2. The only ones that can't become court orders are level 3. And one of the big areas of confusion that people have is if there is a level 3 level decision-making, and those are usually very serious, major changes to the parenting plan, major recommendations like major medical decisions, and just mind you, I don't even really want to make those decisions. I don't want to decide whether a child is having surgery or not. But there's certain things that I wouldn't even let people change from a level 3 to a 2, even if they wanted to. But a level 3, just because it's a level 3, it does not mean that a parenting plan coordinator can't talk about it. It does not mean that they can't give their thoughts about it. It doesn't mean that it can't be something that they can assist in mediating. It just cannot be a binding court order decision. So I had a case actually with Lisa Hacker also, where there was an issue about COVID vaccination, and they had decided that COVID vaccination was going to be a level 3 decision making. So I didn't have authority to make any court orders, but that didn't mean that I didn't have the ability to talk about COVID vaccinations. And one of the parents was a little confused about whether I would be allowed to talk about it or not. It is really helpful if you have this stipulation done in advance. One way that I can recommend to attorneys is, I say, is if there's a disagreement as to what level of authority, why don't we just agree to use the default ones that the court has already selected? That's why they've done you the favor of giving you the pre-filled out form. So Lisa's very well versed in what the different levels of authority are and what the issues are. But I find that a lot of lawyers feel nervous because they haven't used the PPC form. And then that gets transmitted to the clients who feel adverse to the idea altogether.
Well, and I think what the clients feel, Robin, and this is the problem, they feel like the PPC is going to decide custody. Like, I think that's their overriding feeling, rather than understanding that it could be for these small things that are are the a million email kind of things, that maybe just having someone that can actually decide them. These are not, for the most part, I think most of the decisions, and you tell me, Robin, what you found, but I know when I did this and just in the work that I do, they're really smaller decisions. Most of them, they are not like, the day-to-day is often just sometimes more of a problem than just, these big, huge things. But that's just my thing that would really potentially help them, because someone just has to decide. Like you said, they can argue forever. I have someone right now, they are going to have a PPC. Like you said, where the drop off? Like, I don't even know how many lawyers, how much dollars are spent on a drop off. Like, these are not life changing for really anyone. So those are the things I think it's important to think about. Like, even if you tackle it at that level, and maybe making it less scary, because I think it's a little scary is what my feeling, that maybe even with lawyers who feel like they don't want their clients to, there's always this thing of we're relinquishing power, right? This is what our client, the joint one, right? I'm not going to relinquish my power and authority. Well, okay, I don't know what, I always remind them, I don't know.
You have no power and authority because you guys are at a deadlock all the time.
Exactly. I don't have it. But what is a judge? I mean, I said a judge, they kind of have a lot of authority. If you go that way, the authority, you don't even get to have a conversation. So that's sort of how I look at it. A judge is to me, a much more of a wild card than using these other avenues to, get to at least a faster resolution. And the other thing I do want to say, I just worry about people on and on and on with conflict. It is so unhealthy. So it's just not, it's not good for them. It's not good for their children. I mean, we know what conflict does to kids. And so I just think if there's ways that we have, or tools or people that we can have these people go to help minimize any part of it, that to me is huge. And that's, sort of where I'm trying to lead people to those kinds of, resolutions.
And to bring it full circle, I think it's also really important, again, going back to my peas and carrots here, is that, having somebody doing co-parenting work also, this works best because
yes,
they still, it's not just, I need a decision making. Yes, that's helpful. But what becomes really helpful is when I get information from Lisa about what may have been done to resolve this in co-parenting, what has been done. And if they don't have a co-parenting person anymore, I usually require that at least they check in with me at least every 6 to 8 weeks, because you can't just resolve conflicts in a vacuum without understanding what the buildup may have been. And so I spent a lot of time trying to get clients to advance plan and think about potential conflicts, right? So right now I'm working on summer schedules with people.
Yeah.
I'm not working on winter break. We are too late working on winter break. Should have been, months ago. The ones that are on winter break, which I have a few, are, I'm making decisions on what day flights are going versus, or hours of flights or returns or whatever. But it's really training people who are in conflict that you have to start thinking about this way in advance so that everyone can be heard. So all the information could be assessed. And this is where I am different than a court. I tell the clients, the judge is going to read whatever, declaration. I don't even know how many pages declarations are limited to, but whatever number those are done. I will call the Cub Scouts coach. I meet with kids. I talk to teachers. I will do the work to really make sure that I understand a situation. And I want to answer a question because Minty brought it up, and I think it's important. All this sounds really fine and well for people who have resources.
Oh, no.
And I don't, and she didn't say it that way. I'm saying it that way. The question Minty was asking is, what solutions can you offer indigent parties, victims of domestic violence? And it is inherently a service for those who have resources and are privileged. And it's unfortunate. And I wish there was a PPC nonprofit, and maybe some energetic next generation person here will start something of this sort. I have done limited scope type of, I'll call them maybe forceful mediations, where I'm not truly a PPC, because the PPC appointment is requires an investment of time. So I don't know that it's something that indigent folks will be able to get much relief from people because of the amount of time that has to be put in to be effective. But if I can spot check individual issues or help, like attorneys have asked me to, can I come in and at least give a discussion of what would happen on an issue or what have you. I'm personally willing to do that for lawyers. I will give my time if there's a situationally that needs it. I don't know if you know, Lisa, of any other resources.
No, I mean, I think it's just very tragic. I mean, we could have a whole nother, symposium about, this area, because it's very challenging. There's so few people that do this anyway. It's hard. I mean, I think and I've thought about this a lot, like it's really training. I mean, we don't even have people like mental health people that are trained to do co-parenting. Like it goes back to like education, like that people are coming out of college and graduate school, like taking this over and learning this and being able to do it, so that they know what they're doing. So it's a hard one. I wish I had, the answer, and I don't. That's all.
Most therapists are running for the hills for cases like this.
Yeah.
That's the issue, is that the number of board complaints, and for you lawyers out there, a lot of people don't necessarily realize it. The state bar is a lot more protective of its members than the Board of Behavioral Sciences. And so I think, even when I went back to school, I was like, should I get licensed? Like the last thing I want to deal with is having to deal with the BBS. And so I think it is very hard to recruit people. And that's one thing I know is a mission of yours, Lisa, of trying to, we need to find the next generation of, and I am the next generation because I'm new I'm an old lawyer, but a new therapist.
Any other questions, Robin? Do we have?
We welcome your questions. We want your questions. Aaron's popping in with questions.
Hi, for both of you, when you are combining your skills, and when you do find where it's, a level 3.5 or 4 case, and then, that those individuals do have a parenting plan coordinator, do you find that eventually things even out, or it's just like they're in for the whole 18 years and or do you feel like Robin, if you're saying, oh, nope, you're picking them up here, or no, you're this, do they eventually just figure out like, okay, let's just resolve it? Or if they're this locked in, it's just their relationship, and unless both change, forget about it?
That's a great question. I actually have a PPC case that they keep renewing me, and I only see them twice a year. They only can't figure out the schedule. And everything else, they send me notes. We know what you're going to say already, Robin. So we don't even, they learn. And that's what I'm always trying to do. They learn kind of what my style is. I'm like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? They're like, you're going to do blah, blah, blah. And that's what I hope to do. So there are people I've had long-term that have gotten better. I've had people that have left and come back, or just need one issue. Lisa, I probably imagine the same happens to you in the co-parenting.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the same thing as well, and that's the goal. Like that makes me feel the happiest, like that people move on, but then they pop up again. Like I just had someone I saw them 5 years ago, and they're just having an issue now, and they've done really well. It was so lovely. Like I talked to them last week. They were the lovely, lovely people, but they have a teenager now, and there's some struggles and challenges. And so like, yeah, and it was difficult, things maybe were more difficult than a lot of people, and then they do well, and then that's, I think, what's so important, that if they know that we're a resource for them throughout, their children's lives, that they can come and touch back and we can help them as needed. I mean, but I don't want to keep people, forever. Like, that is not, there's something very wrong, unfortunately, with those cases where they just, it seems like they're just, and some are, maybe they will always need support. And that's just what it is.
Well,
Well,
and on that note, I'd said that I have a lot of, say, clients, friends, or whatnot that have used you, Lisa, as a therapist, not in the litigation sense. They're either after the litigation sense. So I don't think I've ever had you on a case, but I specifically remember a case with a friend of mine who was a very contentious post-divorce with 2 kids, spoke to one parent. And the kid said to me, listen, I used to say a horrible text message to my dad. And Lisa Hacker said, if you wouldn't speak to me that way, you shouldn't speak to one of your parents. And I think about that I try to use that with my clients, not to someone's kid, but the 2 of you really can have such a great impact on lives. I mean, and it's just been really enlightening listening to you. Especially as someone who litigates, just to realize there are other avenues and that it doesn't have to be such high conflict. I mean, Lisa, Robin helped me on a case with a criminal aspect. And, there are times I would call her and say, can you help me draft this email? Because I don't know how to not sound like an aggressive attorney who's very upset that the wife kidnapped my client's kids and no one can find her for 2 months. So, I mean, I think it's all the tone, whether it's communicating as lawyers with opposing counsel, with our clients. And I love what you guys are saying about the collaborative process of different individuals, because even as lawyers, it's always better to have 2 heads than one. And so when you bring in all these different skill sets, I think it would really, again, unfortunately, only for those who can afford it, which is another issue. And I have some suggestions that we can talk about.
And Erin, you're modeling the lawyers working together. We're hoping that models to the parents how to work together, because a lot of times when the conflict fires on in the lawyers.
Yes.
And the other thing glad you touched on, Erin, which neither Robin and I have said, and this is another area that I think both Robin and I do, is just working with a lawyer, doing consultation cases, because I feel like it's, again, first of all, it's a lot easier, I think, in some ways, but we are here, I know Robin does it and I do it as well, because I think that's a great matchup as, and important that the lawyer and the therapist are there together to help. If an individual needs help and assistance, then that's another area that I've actually am doing more of as well. And it just gives a balance to, my work life, where and I enjoy it because I enjoy working with the attorneys. And I think it's the 2 heads together.
Well, and Marcy made a point, or what do you do when either one of you are working with a couple that has, untreated or unquote diagnosed mental health issues, substance abuse issues? I mean, again, Robin said, I don't care what your diagnosis is. You both did. I'm dealing with this, but I mean, that makes it difficult as well if you do have a bipolar issue or any kind of mental health or illness such as alcoholism. And how does that play into it?
Well, but then maybe that's the thing for the lawyer, that person needs some individual help. Like then as if that's your client, like you're identifying your client has those issues, then I think, then they need their own support to help them through that process. We're not saying that those aren't real issues, because they are, and they're super challenging. Because you see them, we see them too. But it is really individual. And I do think when those people do get individual support, as well as doing the co-parenting or working in a PPC realm, they do better, because they also, they can practice, they can prepare for sessions. I've done that too. You have to help them, to do better. Did
I cut you off, Robin? I'm so
sorry. No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. No, I think, and there are a lot of tools, and to Lisa's point, we do offer a variety of different services because frankly, we need a well-balanced diet of different types of cases, right? So it's fun to be able to help one person behind the scenes with a lawyer that wants to collaborate, help people with communication, because I think really what we recognize is not divorce that's bad for kids, it's conflict, and really recognizing that these cases are generally a dynamic, even if whatever mental health, even if there is mental health, even if there is substance abuse, it still is a dynamic. It is still a dynamic that everyone contributes to. And if everybody was made 5% of improvements in their kid's life, that would be a cumulative 10%. I'll take it. I've never, my definition of success now, since I've started this work, I used to be a type A+ student. If I get a C, I'm like stoked now. If I can make it a little bit better, that's good enough.
I'm with you, Robin. That's I said the bar is it's different, and it's okay. It's okay. Also, I've learned that, because you're still changing lives. And I will end this by saying I wrote a paper, and I think I don't know if you guys have ever heard me say this, but I wrote a paper in college. The reason I wanted to be a therapist, because if I could change the life of one child, that's why I wanted to have this job. So that's why I do this job. And I do think even that if we're making it 10% better for them, 20% better, whatever it is, it's at least better than it was. And sometimes I think we just have to all of us have to say we're doing our best. We really are. And we need our clients to work as hard as we are too. That's another issue, that we can't be working harder than they are, because that doesn't work either. So, but I think if we're all here to support each other, that's another very, very important part, at least of me, at the process. And I always want to say, even though we're not seeing anyone in person, I really appreciate all of you and my relationships with you, because it's really what makes it all happen. Otherwise, it can't happen in a vacuum.
Well, thank you both. Robin, did you want to say anything in closing?
No, I will just echo those comments. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
We appreciate it so much. It was really insightful.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys.
You guys too.
Bye.
And before we go on to our fourth program,